All right, let's bring in RT's Yunan O'Neill, who is in New Delhi covering the G20 summit, which has just wrapped up. Yunan, talk to us about the atmosphere on the second day of the summit.
Yeah, very action-packed atmosphere, Rachel, really, because we're now into the dying embers of India's first G20 summit that it is hosting. And in fact, it's already passed the baton off officially to Brazil, which will be the next host in 2024. So much to dig into over the past 48 hours, and indeed today as well, because that's the closing day, really, when a lot of topics are touched upon, last-minute deals, meetings on the sidelines as well, and so many topics too. So in fact, let's get into it all, because I'm joined by another great guest here on our rooftop studio overlooking Delhi. It's a pleasure to welcome onto the programme Jaspal S. Sindharm, who was, and let me give justice to this title, consultant on energy markets, particularly in East Asia at the World Bank. Sir, you're very welcome to the programme. The G20, it came about because the focus on the economy, stabilising financial markets in 2008, is that still its primary remit? Because we know that sometimes the politicisation of relations between members in the grouping takes the headlines. So how do you see the G20 as it stands today?
The G20, you're right, it came about to handle the international markets, financial markets, international economy, trade, crises. In 1999, we saw the first meetings of the G20 actually. And, but it was still it was a Western-led group, a group led by the G7. And they had some other countries, economies as part of it that were important, like China, India, whoever they wanted to select from Africa, like they selected South Africa. They had left out at that time Nigeria and Egypt. So it was like pick and choose for the G7 countries, basically. And by now it has evolved more into a much more multipolar gathering than just a G7 club.
Well, particularly this year, because the African Union is set to join.
African Union is set to join, and already the African countries, the big countries, had joined the BRICS. So it was a big pressure on G20 to take note of this.
Do you think they have, are they trying to run parallel, or is there now direct competition between those groups?
There not only there is a competition between the two groups, but also the US is trying to create something, I think, I may be wrong, something like a BISU facing the BRICS. Brazil, India, South Africa, and the US. So they are trying to, they have been, so that
in that way, okay.
Yes. Yeah. So they are stumbling along, the Western group, to find some footing as the economic map changes.
The reason I bring up the politicisation is because the final declaration, there had been talk that possibly there wouldn't be any this weekend because of so many differences, not only about the Ukraine conflict, but also climate change, who's going to pay for details surrounding that. But it seems diplomacy has won out, and under India's hosting, there will be an agreement, a final communique. It's good diplomacy, isn't it? It
is good diplomacy, and India has been able to walk the middle path among all the countries. Yes, you are right that there could have been more, the whole joint consensus could have been stalled on the joint declaration, the consensus, and the Indians were able to bring it out. And the Russians also agreed to it. Very, very big thing. The politicization of G20 goes along anyway, because Russia is still working under a lot of economic sanctions and trade barriers, economic sanctions. And how can you have energy security in the world when you have sanctioned the biggest energy superpower? In my 2006 report to the government of China, which I had worked with the International Energy Agency, Paris, and the DRC, of the Premier's Office of China, and the World Bank. At that time, I had termed the rise of the energy superpower, Russia. In 2006, Russia was already emerging, whether it's nuclear, coal, it's natural gas, LNG part of natural gas, or crude oil. Russia is the energy superpower. If you want to force sanctions on them, price caps, and you still want a sustainable, economic growth and poor countries to have sustainable economic growth targets. Even climate change in some ways I perceive as politicization of the energy agenda. Even in 2006 I had perceived it so. Even the use of coal, in some ways it is trying to put political controls over the free working of international energy markets.
Well, just on that very point, if I may, when it comes to the climate change situation, there seems to be a drive by Western nations to push a green agenda onto developing nations to hurry up, do it yesterday, as soon as you can. But they're worrying about feeding their families, about sending their children to school in many nations that the West is dictating to. So doesn't it go hand in hand, clean, renewable energy, but you have to get to a certain stage of development in order to do that?
Absolutely. There has to be a balance between different sources of the energy, like renewable and fossil fuels. And you cannot rush the agenda of green energy on countries that have not even reached the stage of utilizing natural gas.
And is the West understanding of that, of the global south?
No. They want to push their own agenda because they want to curtail the expansion of the fossil fuels, which are the best and the
quickest
way to provide. And natural gas is the most environmentally friendly.
But it's such a bad word right now in the West, isn't it? But the developed world
they
needs
want
it.
to mix ethanol into fuels. And the Americans are one of the largest ethanol producers along with Brazil. And they're burning their corn and sugarcane. They're destroying, the ethanol and these things, which are called so-called green fuels added to fossil fuels, have a larger environmental footprint than extraction of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Destruction of the Amazon jungles, the use of entire corn production in the US for ethanol. And then you say that there is energy, there is food scarcity in the world, the food prices are rising. These are all connected. Natural gas is the natural path to sustainable economic growth in the world. You cannot bypass it.
Can I put a point to you that I've heard raised in the West, and it's perhaps a valid point. If you're a Joe Bloggs Westerner living in England or France, say, and you're constantly hearing that you have to pay for Africa, particularly the global south, to try and get them up to a stage, why should they care that the global south develops quickly, and why should their taxes go up to help that?
Western economies themselves are suffering such a huge economic recession across the Western economies, across Europe. Germany, the industrial production is contracting because of their lack of Russian gas. And the UK economy is again under pressure. The Americans are just doing it because they have the dollar as the foreign exchange. They can print as much of it as they want. But despite all the stimuluses that have been put in, they have not been able to raise the contraction of the job contraction.
Yes.
What I say, unemployment. It has not been affected much by all the global stimuluses that have been put through. And in this, they want the global south, which is so far behind, to put them into a green path, which green energies, industrial development needs energy intensity. Without that, industrialization is not possible. And the green fuels can't provide the energy intensity that can be provided by the fossil fuels, particularly natural gas.
Yeah. It's a realistic point of view.
It's a realistic point of view.
And it's the one that a lot of leaders in the global south understand perhaps better than those in the West.
If you put 1 megawatt, 1 gigawatt, for 1 megawatt of solar energy, you need about 6,000 square meters. So
Okay.
you can imagine if you need 1,000, how much land is covered with the solar panels. It is not possible.
Yeah.
And for about
It's a big
100,
issue.
for 100 in just a small piece of patch of land, you can generate 400 megawatts from natural gas.
Yeah, well, tell you what, it's been an absolute pleasure testing you on all that and picking your brain, because it's very much a situation we need to delve into in the very near future. But thank you so much for now, Jaspal S. Sindharm, who is a consultant on East Asia energy market for
international
the World
energy
Bank.
markets, also East
Well,
Asia. But I'm a
which we touched
specialist
upon.
on China. Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Just stay where you are for just a moment, because we're going to just cross back to our Moscow studio. That's the type of analysis we've been delving into all weekend, really, here on the programme. Lots of questions to get through still today. We're going to wrap it up with the big issues that have been ongoing at the G20 summit. It is ongoing. It's still going. Any of the news updates, we'll bring it to you here from New Delhi. Back to you in Moscow.
All right, Ewan O'Neill, thank you so much.